Many of us have been raised with the same teaching since childhood. Work harder, strive harder, don't give up, and success will be yours. But lurking behind this teaching is a profound illusion, because effort itself is sometimes the biggest obstacle to success. At the quantum level, the universe reads energetic alignment more than physical action. The more you want something, the louder you declare to the universe that you don't actually have it. This creates an energetic paradox. The more you try to fulfill your desire, the more you reinforce its absence. Your effort unconsciously becomes a signal of resistance, and the universe hears what you feel, not what you say. This is precisely where the idea of being, rather than doing more, comes into play. Because at the quantum level of consciousness, true transformation arises not from external actions, but from an internal frequency shift. If you truly want to attract something, you must believe that it is already within your field. This belief is not a mental wish. It is an energetic alignment. There is no distance between you and your desire, only a lack of awareness. Any excessive effort makes this distance seem real, trapping you in a cycle of invisible resistance. Effort is a kind of friction in the quantum realm, because when you strive, the mind is fixated on the question, how, whereas the language of the universe is why. Unless you can find a clear answer to the question, why do I want it? You will be lost behind the question, how. This is why most people's energy is drained, because they try to force the natural flow of the universe to conform to the plan of their own desires. But true creation occurs through alignment, not planning. When you plant a seed in the ground, you don't grow it by tugging at it daily. Similarly, when you plant an intention at the conscious level, you must create space for it to grow, rather than constantly forcing it. This space is filled with silence, patience, and surrender. The human mind often perceives this as inaction, but at the quantum level, this is the most productive form of action. Because energy grows in an environment without resistance. When you stop striving, you actually step out of the way of the energy flow. All quantum systems seek balance. If your inner frequency is restless, the universe reflects this restlessness. The constant state of wanting more is a vibration focused on lack. That's why most of the time when you say, it didn't work, it doesn't work, why is it always me? You're unconsciously recreating the same cycle. Because energy grows wherever you focus your attention. The more you try to solve something, the more complex it becomes. The solution arises not from the noise of the mind, but from the silence of awareness. That's why transcending effort is a kind of leap of consciousness. At some point, you realize that the more you try to do, the less results you get. Because the act of doing still underlies the feeling of, I'm not enough. In the quantum realm, the true creative power is the feeling of, I've already done. When you hold this feeling, the universe synchronizes with you. The mind often wants to control everything, to know, direct, and plan everything. But control at the quantum level is one of the greatest illusions, because the observer always influences the system. When you try to control an outcome, you fixate it on a specific probability. This narrows the field of possibilities. Surrender, however, keeps all possibilities open. It doesn't mean doing nothing. On the contrary, it means intuitively doing the right thing at the right moment. It's like dancing with the universe. You don't memorize the steps. You feel the music. The struggling mind silences the music. The feeling mind moves in harmony with it. In the quantum realm, this is precisely what flow means. Energy effortlessly finding expression through you. Effort itself is an invisible form of the belief that I'm not good enough. That's why many people remain dissatisfied even when they achieve success. Because a lack code is still operating at the conscious level. When you try less, your frequency is heard more clearly. Because you're no longer sending the universe a message of, I need this, but rather, I'm already attuned to this. And the universe always responds to precise frequencies. Perhaps it's time to ask yourself, am I truly trying, or am I resisting? If the answer is resistance, stop. Be quiet for a moment. Breathe. Because in that stillness, the universe speaks to you. That's when you transcend effort, and ironically, that's when everything starts working for you. Resistance is an invisible wall. You can't see it with your eyes, but it blocks all flow on an energetic level. In the quantum realm, resistance is a vibrational reflection of the belief that, I don't have it yet. Whenever you strive for something, your consciousness actually emits the message, I don't have it yet. And the universe, like a perfect echo, sends this frequency back to you. Resistance isn't the opposite of desire. It's its shadow. In every should-be statement, there's a hidden feeling of currently missing. Therefore, the silent enemy of quantum creation isn't effort, but the resistance behind that effort. Reality is a much more sensitive mirror than you think. Whatever vibration you maintain as an observer, the world you observe is shaped by that frequency. Therefore, without understanding your relationship with what you observe, you can't change it. Change begins not with manipulating the external world, but with recognizing your position as an observer. In a quantum system, the observer is not merely an observer. They are also the determining factor in the outcome. Science describes this as the observer effect. A particle's behavior changes only with the presence of the consciousness that observes it. This is the most striking paradox that demonstrates the power of awareness, even in the physical world. When you focus on a possibility, you make it real. Therefore, if there are recurring patterns in your life, it's because your consciousness constantly chooses the same possibility. Resistance keeps this choice cycle unbroken, because your energy resonates with fear or inadequacy. When you make something must-have, you energetically lock yourself in. The observer effect reminds you, the universe responds to who you are, not what you want. And if you're constantly observing the non-existent, that non-existence will always remain with you. Therefore, the first step in quantum awareness is to change your way of observing. The mind, which constantly analyzes the external world and seeks to control every detail, narrows the field of possibilities. Because the more rigid the observation, the more limited reality becomes. The mind, in its attempt to determine the outcome, fixes infinite possibilities in the form of waves on a single point. The nature of the universe is fluid. When you define something with certainty, you cancel out all other possibilities. Therefore, for a desire to manifest, you must make it possible, not must-have. This difference is small, but energetically revolutionary. When you say possible, your frequency softens, resistance dissolves, and the observer effect is released. The creative field of the universe operates precisely within this flexibility. In the quantum realm, resistance often disguises itself as fear. Fear is a trapped state of energy. The desire for control arises from an unconscious fear. If I let go, it'll be gone. But in reality, when you don't let go, it's already gone, because your energy is fixated on its lack. Therefore, quantum wisdom begins with relinquishing control. If a thought says, it won't happen, and you don't observe and believe it, it can no longer control you. This is where the power of the observer comes in. Consciousness is the sole power that shapes energy, but many people confuse this power with thoughts. Thought is not the instrument of the observer. It is merely a reflection. In the quantum realm, resistance is a vibration, and observation is a choice. At every moment, you choose which frequency to observe. If you observe with the weight of the past, the echo of fear, the voice of inadequacy, this energy field becomes your reality. But when you recognize your observation and shift to a new level of perception, even the same event appears differently. Because when consciousness changes, matter changes. Therefore, at the quantum level, nothing is absolute. Everything is reborn according to the frequency of the observer. Sometimes a decision, a realization, or even just a breath changes the vibration of the entire system. That's why resistance dissolves with awareness. Resistance isn't an enemy. It's simply an old security mechanism. It shows that a part of your consciousness still believes in fear. When this is recognized, resistance disappears because it's no longer a conscious choice. Recognizing the observer effect is your consciousness learning to manage its own energy. Instead of asking, why isn't it happening? You begin to ask, what frequency am I on? This question moves you from victim consciousness to creator consciousness. And it's precisely at this point that a small but powerful awareness arises. The universe hears your peace, not your effort. Because peace is a state of energy without resistance. When resistance dissolves, the observer reunites with the source of their own existence. You no longer become a spectator of reality, but a consciousness that creates it. At that moment, you no longer need to force anything, because the universe has begun to express itself through you. Surrender is the deepest state of consciousness that most people misunderstand. The mind confuses surrender with defeat because its nature is programmed to struggle, control, and predict. But at the quantum level, surrender is not passive acceptance. It is the highest form of creation. Because the universe listens to your energy, not your words. A mind in surrender sends the universe a signal, I trust. This trust is a resonance in which all possibilities open up. and energy returns to its natural state. In quantum physics, this is called the possibility wave vibrating freely without collapsing. In other words, surrender is allowing potentials to flow without being constricted. When you let go of a goal, the universe's own intelligence begins to act on your behalf. Because in the quantum realm, saying, "I don't know," means anything is possible. Humanity's relationship with the universe often resembles a bargain. Give me this, and I'll do that. But energy doesn't work that way. The universe is not a conditioned system, it is a frequential mirror. Whatever your inner state is, the external world reflects it. Therefore, surrender is not a method of achieving things, but a way of being. Surrender is a consciousness beyond the trust that it will work out in my favor. It is the awareness that everything is already working out in my favor. Because at the quantum level, nothing is a coincidence. Every experience exists to move you to the next level of awareness. When you surrender, you no longer manage life, but begin to flow with it. This state is not passivity, but perfect active harmony. Quantum energy responds to your openness, not your resistance. And openness emerges when the mind is silent. The mind wants to define everything. When it defines, it relaxes because uncertainty terrifies it. Yet the language of the quantum field is uncertainty. Uncertainty is the realm where possibilities dance freely. If you insist on defining everything, you narrow down the possibilities. The moment you define an outcome as, "This is how it should be," you choose that single possibility as the observer. But when you surrender, you simultaneously make all possibilities possible. This difference is the essence of creation. Surrender is moving in harmony with energy rather than directing it. Like a leaf released into the flow of a river, when you merge with the rhythm of life, you naturally reach your optimal place, striving for nothing. Because the intelligence of the universe constantly carries you toward your highest potential. At the quantum level, surrender is a shift in the observer's position. In a state of resistance, the observer focuses on the question, "How will it happen?" A surrendered observer shifts to a state of, "It's already happening." This difference may seem small, but energetically, it's a monumental shift. The question of how fuels the quest for control, while the awareness of "it's happening" expands its frequency. Even science has shown that the way a system is measured changes its outcome. Therefore, awareness itself is the measuring tool. As you expand your awareness, the reality you observe changes. Surrender is the most expansive form of awareness, because it excludes nothing, forces nothing, and encompasses everything. In this state, the universe becomes not your enemy, but an extension of you. You are no longer a part of life, you are life itself. But the greatest obstacle to surrender is the ego's fear. The ego exists through control. Letting go is like death for it. Therefore, surrender calls for the ego's collapse. This is precisely why many people fear letting go. They believe their identity will dissolve. In reality, the dissolution of that identity is the emergence of their true self. Just as a caterpillar cannot leave its cocoon, a butterfly is born only when it can. Surrender is the gateway to this transformation. In the quantum realm, the ego is a density that intensifies vibration. Every event, every person, every coincidence becomes part of a divine flow. Surrender allows you to hear that music. Perhaps surrender is the courage to say, "I don't know." Because not knowing is the domain of the soul, not the mind. The soul senses direction, not direction. Therefore, surrender is not passive waiting, but intuitive awareness. It acts when the time is right and remains silent when the time is not. In this state of consciousness, life becomes not a chain of coincidences, but an energy language that speaks to you. You now notice the signals, you perceive the synchronicities. Because you are no longer just an observer, you are the frequency itself. The science of surrender is the moment when you make peace with the universe. You are no longer against anything, but with everything. When the mind is silent, energy speaks. And in that moment you realize you were never alone. The universe had always heard you. You were just too loud. Now you are silent. And in that silence, true creation begins. The void. It is the place most people flee from, but the birthplace of all creation. For the universe was born from a silence. Even matter vibrated into existence from that silence. The void is not nothingness. On the contrary, it is an infinite sea of possibilities where everything exists in a state of potential. Quantum physics whispered this truth years ago. Matter is a condensed form of energy. The source of energy is the void. In other words, what we call nothingness is actually everything. But the human mind struggles to accept this paradox because it lives by definition. When the mind cannot define something, it fears it. That's why many people perceive the voids that arise in their lives as threats. When they become unemployed, when a relationship ends, when they lose their bearings. Yet those moments of emptiness are the most fertile seedbeds for consciousness. Because when something collapses, space opens. And the universe always fills the void. The void is where control ends, because nothing is defined there. The mind cannot find meaning to cling to in the void. This is like a kind of death for it. But this death is the rebirth of consciousness. Just as a wave transforms into a particle in the quantum field, your energy must first dissolve before it can transition to a new form. The void is the field of this dissolution. There, your old identity, beliefs, and fears dissolve. This dissolution process is disturbing because consciousness leaves a comfort zone defined by habit. However, that discomfort is the birth pain of a new vibration. One who can dwell in the void turns the pace of evolution to their own advantage. Because there is no longer an echo of the past. There is only pure possibility. And pure possibility is the raw material of creation. To understand the power of the void, one must learn to hear its language. That language is silence. Silence is not the sound of absence, but the depth of energy. In those moments when the mind is silent, consciousness returns to its own nature. Therefore, meditation is not just a relaxation practice, it is the purest form of quantum resonance. When you remain silent, the boundary between the observer and the observed thins. Only what is remains. Therefore, even your identity dissolves, because when you realize you are the observer, you also realize your oneness with everything you observe. This awareness is the core of creation. In the void, time dissolves. The shadow of the past and the anxiety of the future disappear. Only the present moment remains, and the present moment is the single point where all potentials converge. But humans fear the void because they don't know who they are. The mind immediately tries to find a definition. I'm empty, I'm lost, I don't know what to do. That's not the language of the universe. The universe listens to your energy, not your words. If you define emptiness with fear, the frequency of fear will fill that space. But if you encounter emptiness with trust, surrender, and curiosity, creation begins. Because at the quantum level, emptiness is shaped by intention. Every intention is a seed of energy planted into the void. Therefore, saying "I don't know" is not a weakness, but a creative openness. The void opens its door to consciousnesses that don't know the how, but feel the why. The less you know, the more you receive, because then the universe can work on your behalf. The void is also like a mirror. Your energy is revealed there, naked. That's why most people can't stay in the void, because all masks fall there. There are no roles, no titles, no I, only a pure sense of being. This state is where the ego dissolves. And precisely for this reason, the freedom of the soul begins there. For true power lies not in being something, but in needing nothing. A new one cannot be built without clearing the old energy field. Therefore, the void is a sacred space of purification. If you feel like nothing is happening in your life right now, perhaps the most is happening right now, because energy is being rewired in invisible fields. The universe operates silently. It operates as softly as a whisper. That's why the void speaks to those who listen attentively. Only the impatient mistake it for silence. That silence is the breath of infinite potential. Perhaps it's time to hear that silence. Close your eyes for a moment and do nothing. Don't think, don't direct, don't control. Just be. Then you'll feel the void envelop you. In that moment, you no longer fell into the void. You became the void. And at that very point, the universe is reborn. For the void is the 0 point of creation. All possibilities vibrate within that invisible stillness. Your only task is to notice this silence and allow it. The universe always speaks from the void, but only the silent hear it. Flow is the most natural state of quantum consciousness, because nothing in the universe is static. Everything is constantly vibrating, expanding, and changing. Even atoms are not static. They flow like water. Being in flow means being aware of this universal movement. When a person forgets this cosmic flow, resistance arises. When resistance begins, energy becomes compressed, time slows, and life becomes an effort. However, someone in flow allows energy to move through them. This permission is not passive acceptance. It is a sign of trust in the intelligence of the universe. At the quantum level, flow is that momentary resonance when the system finds its own balance. In that invisible web where everything is interconnected in perfect harmony, you are a vibration. And when you feel the rhythm of this web, you no longer try to control anything, because you know that life flows through you, not from you. To enter flow is to speak the language of the universe, because the language of the universe is not effort, but alignment. When your energy resonates in lockstep with the universe, coincidences become meaningful, events synchronize, and people appear at the right time. Science calls this resonance. In spiritual terms, it's the law of harmony. Two systems vibrating at the same frequency naturally attract each other. So when you're in flow, what you're looking for finds you. You don't have to force it. You simply maintain your own frequency. The mind struggles to understand this because it can't trust without controlling. But the secret of flow lies precisely here. When trust replaces control, the energy aligns itself. That's why people in flow often appear peaceful, because they've learned to move with life, not manage it. At the quantum level, everything communicates with each other through vibration. Your thoughts, emotions, intentions, all are waves. Your frequency interacts with the space around you. If you're internally tense, the outside world reflects that vibration back to you. If you're at peace, the outside world returns that peace back to you. The universe is like a mirror. It reflects what you vibrate, not what you give. Being in flow means hearing your own melody and living in harmony with it. Your heartbeat, your breathing, even your thoughts carry a rhythm. When you notice them instead of suppressing them, your energy is regulated. When your mind stops trying to control them and begins to feel them, resonance is reestablished. Because the rhythm of the universe is heard from within you. And once you connect with this rhythm, no external noise can distract you. Even time operates differently within the frequency of flow. Because then, there is no regret for the past or anxiety for the future. There is only the vibration of the moment. This moment is the only place where the universe hears you. Quantum consciousness perceives time not linearly, but circularly. The frequency you emit now shapes a possibility across multiple timelines. That's why the moment is sacred. It is where all possibilities converge. In the science of flow, what matters is not the direction of intention, but the clarity of energy. If your intention is pure, the flow will carry you to the right place. That's why, when wise people say, "What is meant to be happens," they are speaking the language of science, not surrender. Because sometimes changing the direction of energy is possible by simply stepping out of its path. When you stop pushing, you realize that energy has an intelligence of its own. Just as you can't direct a river with your hands, you can't direct life with your mind. But when you throw a stone into the water, you can see how the ripples spread. This is how your thoughts work. Each one is a wave, and it resonates within your space. Therefore, staying in the flow isn't about suppressing your thoughts, but about recognizing their fleeting nature. You can't control the wave, but you can learn to swim with it. Being in the flow is, in fact, returning to nature. The quantum field is nature itself. There's no room for force there. There's only harmony. There's a rhythm where everything blooms in its own time. A flower doesn't grow by forcing the soil. It only blooms when its time is right. The sun doesn't rise a second too early, but it's never too late. The entire cycle of the universe is proof of this flawless flow. Humanity is a part of this order. When we learn to trust this rhythm, life becomes not an effort, but a poem. Because when we're in the flow, we're no longer the destination, but the journey itself. And now, I have an invitation for you. Step into the frequency of flow. Don't try to stop your thoughts. Simply notice the consciousness that follows them. Take a deep breath, for the rhythm of that breath is one with the heartbeat of the universe. Write "I'm in the flow" in the comments. This word isn't just a statement. It's a frequency affirmation. Remember, when you're in flow, nothing challenges you. Because you're no longer fighting life, you're life itself. The most fascinating aspect of the quantum field is its dance with contradictions. This field melts opposites into one, giving birth to new meaning. A wave is both a particle and not a particle. Energy is both visible and invisible. You are both an individual in the entire universe. This paradoxical nature shapes not only physical reality, but also the level of consciousness. For this is the essence of life, realizing that seemingly contradictory poles are actually different aspects of the same whole. The doctrine of when you strive less, you attract more is also a reflection of this quantum paradox. For the mind, this statement is meaningless because the mind believes in linear causality. According to it, results are a function of effort. But for consciousness, effort is where energy is compressed. Surrender is where it expands. The quantum field responds to expansion. Therefore, the more you let go, the more you receive. Because when resistance is removed, energy returns to its natural flow. The truth of the paradox lies not in the war of opposites, but in their unity. The human mind lives with either-or thinking, I either succeed or I fail, I win or I lose. But the universe operates on a plane of both this and that. Just as light can be both a wave and a particle, you can both strive and let go. The point here is not to abandon action, but to recognize its origin. If something arises from a feeling of must be, that effort is resistance. But if it arises from an awareness of can be, that effort is flow. This difference determines the direction of energy at the quantum level, because there's a very fine line between repelling energy and inviting it. Inviting creates an open space. Forcing narrows it. Therefore, the secret to connecting with the universe isn't knowing what you want, but rather recognizing the frequency at which you vibrate. Because the universe reads your vibration, not your words. Every paradox is a bridge for the growth of consciousness. Because contradiction reveals the limits of the mind. While the mind asks how, consciousness asks why not. The relationship between you and the universe hinges on this very question. In quantum consciousness, the frequency of why not is an invitation. It activates potential possibilities. The mind sees this as a dream, but for the universe, it's a command. Because a dream is a pre-form of energy. Every reality first vibrates in the realm of possibility and then transforms into matter. In the quantum realm, every energy attracts similar energies. Those who say, I want abundance, are actually signaling that there is no abundance. Those who say, I am already abundant, create that reality. The essence of the paradox is that the state, not the action, is creative. Actions are physical extensions of the state. If the state is peaceful, the action is graceful. If the state is anxious, the action becomes chaotic. Therefore, true change lies in the frequency, not the behavior. Quantum laws state it simply, change your vibration and your reality will change. But vibration changes with awareness, not words, because awareness determines the direction of energy. When the mind resists something, when awareness becomes aware of that resistance, that energy dissolves. This is where the paradox comes in. When you stop trying to change something, it changes. Because you're no longer fighting it. This awareness is the most mature state of consciousness, because then you realize that nothing is against you. And perhaps the greatest paradox of all is this. Even when you're doing nothing, the universe continues to work with you. Because energy never stops. It just changes direction. When you stop trying, the direction shifts from the universe to you. You're no longer in search, but in acceptance. This is the purest form of creation. Then you don't have to struggle for the universe to find you. You simply become ready. Preparation is not mental, but energetic. Therefore, peace is a prerequisite for abundance. In the quantum realm, peace is the highest frequency because it's resistance-free. When you vibrate in peace, everything flows toward you. In that moment, effort loses its meaning, because all the power of the universe is aligned with you. Ultimately, the truth of the paradox can be summed up in a single sentence. You can do anything without doing anything. This is not laziness, but a collaboration with universal intelligence. The mind cannot grasp this because it seeks power in action, but the soul finds power in existence. When these two forces unite in the quantum realm, a person awakens to their creative potential. Everything becomes easier, more fluid, and more natural, because the universe is expressing its own perfection through you. And then you understand, paradox is not contradiction, but the language of wholeness.